Welcome, Mr. Caleb Paull. I am so excited to have you with me on Change and Triumph. This is going to be an awesome conversation. But before we talk about VIP code, the suits, or the 180 events that you have done, I want to go back. Where did your story really begin?
My story began as one of 7 kids being homeschooled. And I think that a lot of the things that I'm learning even now as an adult and in my career and as I serve clients, a lot of the principles and a lot of the different things with work ethic and just integrity is really stemming back to the way that I was raised and the relationships that I had with my siblings and the different ways that my grandparents poured into me, my sports coaches, and the impact that they certainly had on my life and my development. So that's really where my story began, is just as a young kid coming up, beginning to work at an early age, and then over time, which I'm sure we'll unpack during the rest of this time, came to where I
Absolutely.
am today.
Absolutely. So, who were you before people knew you as the networking and connection guy?
Well, I started off in the food industry when I was 15 years old, and I found that I loved serving people. I loved the idea of the regular customers coming in and learning their names and knowing their orders. And I found a deep sense of joy in that, as well as just the fast-paced, high-pressure, high-stress environment of the food industry. And it's funny because I would consider myself somebody that's more reserved and more introverted, naturally speaking. But I really enjoyed being around people in that particular environment. Maybe that was because of the kind of sheltered upbringing that I had. My siblings and I oftentimes joke about being, raised under a rock. And that's not too far off, because there were a lot of things that I didn't do until I was older and later in life. And I have no regrets about that, because all those different experiences, or lack thereof, I think taught me important lessons along the way and gave me a unique perspective. But prior to being in the business professional, more white collar environments, I think I was known as somebody who was very responsible, worked hard, showed up on time to work or to practices when I was in sports, and just gave 100% and pushed myself and those around me to be better. And that was, I think, what I was known for. Even before that, I could call the very first boss that I ever had right now on a cell phone, and he would be excited to talk to me and excited about where I am and what I'm up to these days, just simply because of the relationships and being intentional. So that's what I was known for before I started wearing suits, which I did not wear when I was younger.
Of course. It seems like sports had a big impact on your life. Did you have a coach that you learned something from that you feel really changed your life today?
I think the thing for me with my sports coaches, both in baseball and in wrestling, was just the unwavering belief that they had in me, especially for some of my wrestling coaches that I had for years, and they saw me grow and develop. Obviously, having somebody in that position over my life speak into me, encourage me, believe that I could be better, and to see my potential of competing at a high level in the sport of wrestling and baseball. That was something that I think, looking back, meant a lot to me. I didn't always have that sense of belief and that sense of pride from my father. So having that from my sports coaches certainly meant a lot. And I think helped shaped me as a young man to understand that, hey, even when I don't feel like it myself and I doubt my own abilities, I have people that have watched me grow, and they've helped to develop that skill set within the sport. And they're saying that they see this within me. So that definitely boosted my confidence.
I don't think I've ever met someone who comes from a sports background that isn't really successful in life. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a prerequisite to a successful business career. So you said your early years were not really good or bad, but then around 10, 11, 12, things got a little harder and your parents separated right before you turned 13. What shifted you during that stretch?
I think during that time, perhaps nothing shifted majorly at that time, other than the fact that I knew my parents weren't living together and we had visitation between both parents. But I think a lot of the big shifts came later in life. At that age, 12, 13, I was playing sports. That was like right in the middle of my time doing really well in baseball. I grew a big love and passion for the sport of baseball. And I was still wrestling at that point and continued to wrestle for the next couple of years. And so I think that still became a big part of my identity. Throughout those couple of years, music started becoming more important to me as well. I continued
Mm.
to learn piano, which I had started at an earlier age, but I continued to play and then learned that I could sing and play the piano at the same time. And I was like, all right, this is kind
Wow.
of fun. And that became an
Okay.
escape for me. Even during that time of my life when my parents were separated and when things got really challenging, music became a bit of an escape. It became an emotional safe haven for me.
So music, I don't think anyone knows that you're a musician today. I did not know that. So tell me, so as a musician, what type of music were you playing? What were you, that garage band in the garage and you were hitting the keyboards? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, so I started taking piano lessons, I want to say when I was 7 years old, from the pastor's wife at the church that we went to as kids. And I enjoyed it. I didn't have the same love and passion in the early stages. And I think, again, because it wasn't really tied to anything other than being a great habit to build. And my parents really wanted us all to learn an instrument and to pursue just a basic understanding of music theory and technique. So we all started with the piano, and
Mm,
later on I picked up the guitar and just taught myself some things there. But for me, piano, I just found it to be so fascinating in the way that you can pour out your emotions with 88 keys. You have the minor keys, the major keys, and depending on how you feel, you can make a piano sound like whatever you want it to. And I felt through times of sadness, anger, times when I felt low, times when I felt on top of the world, that I could express myself in a unique way through the piano. And again, just becoming a bit of an escape. And so I sang, I wrote my own songs. I sang a lot of Christian music, a lot of old school, like 90s Christian music. I would pick
I
up
love
songbooks
90s
and just
Christian
learn to
music.
play,
Love
Yeah,
90s
that,
Christian
that was
music.
definitely a big thing for me when I was young.
Awesome. So, but you keep it really separate now in your business career. You don't let anyone know, but you're still a singer, songwriter, and musician, right?
I am. Yeah, I've thought about that. Even over the past year, I have tried to think through different ways that I can incorporate music and my passion and gifts with music into my business, because I don't really see the intersection other than that's something that's close to me and really important in my life. I've
Right.
kept a lot of my music separate and kind of within the church. I'm a worship leader. I have been for over 12 years. That's been a big, big part of my life. And you are correct to say that a lot of people don't know that.
Awesome.
I'll share one little story here. I was at a conference last year and there was a gentleman there who played saxophone and he tied that into his keynote presentation. And I thought that that was
Right.
so unique. And one of the things that he said that really stuck with me, he said, why do you keep trying to hide the things that make you whole? Something along those lines. And so I have thought through different ways, even at my events, that I can begin incorporating music, live music, into my events and using that as a way to tell my story and knowing that it will resonate with certain people because music touches so many hearts. And as you know, music speaks to our soul when words alone can't. And there's a
It
certain
does.
emotional aspect of music. So something that I'm still thinking through and figuring out how God might continue to use music as part of my, my business and my ministry. But that's where I'm at today with it.
I was on my way back from a conference myself. I was coming from Miami back to Orlando, and something, I don't know what it was, told me to talk to this guy. And he just looked important. I said, "Hey, how you doing?" You know how we network. And come to find out, he was a keynote. He's an announcer at many conferences. He used to play the drums and buckets in that musical Stomp. You know that musical Stomp? Have you ever seen it?
Okay.
It's phenomenal. It's
Is it,
phenomenal. So,
I'm not sure. I'd probably know it if I saw it.
okay, well, it's insane. I saw it in New York City. years ago. It's been out for years, and then it went off Broadway, but it was like Broadway, then it went off Broadway, then it's like off Broadway on 8th Street. He was one of the musicians in there, but they play off of everything, like off of drums, not really drums. It's like buckets and the wall and just all kinds of things that they can get their hands on to make a beat. And it is just really phenomenal. So he's taken that strategy and he's now a business conference announcer, one of the best out there. And he incorporates his drumming and all of that into his business, which is very unique. And, it keeps the crowd going. Our conferences sometimes get business and corporate conferences can be very boring, but with this guy, it is by any means not boring because he's incorporated that music into his announcing. So it's part of his whole gig, which is really interesting. So, I mean, you thought as a kid you were going to go and be a pro athlete or maybe go into music. When did it shift to relationships and the psychology of connection?
I think that it really started to shift when I was in my early 20s, and a few years prior to that, I had spent time traveling to different places and even living in different states for various reasons. But when I was in my early 20s, through mentorship, started realizing that some of the skills that I had started to develop in customer service and within hospitality could be applied to a role in sales, and that I could get into the world of business. And as a homeschooled kid that struggled his way through school and never went to college, I just started working at a very young age. The idea of being in a business environment and being in sales, it felt very intimidating to me. I didn't feel like I was, capable of doing that. But through mentorship, through that guidance and belief, I started applying for roles, and over time started realizing the same things that I was intimidated by with connection and relationship building intimidated a lot of people. And even with the way that COVID and other things, even the advancement of technology, how it's continued to redefine and shape the way that we connect with the good and the bad parts of it. I've noticed the continued isolation that people feel. And even those that wouldn't necessarily label themselves as an introvert still struggle with social anxiety, get intimidated by large groups of people. And so I started to understand that, and I related deeply to it. And I realized, wow, maybe I can end up taking some of the love and the passion that I developed for people growing up and through some of the difficulties of my childhood, and seeing just the deep need for belonging and community. Maybe I can start to give back in that way, because I see so many people, especially when I was younger, I would look around and just see other people that I'm like, they're hurting. There's a lot of other kids who have gone through similar things to me, and it's a very common theme nowadays with broken and divided homes. And so that's where some of that passion was formed.
It sure is. It sure is a common theme. And actually, all the kids that came out of 2020, it was very difficult for those kids that were in high school to come out of, all of that isolation and all of the fear and everything that was on the television. I mean, like you said, it's difficult just being human and networking and getting out there and talking to people. Of course, there's so many singers that are infamous. And even today, singers, speakers that get on stage and they just really have to go through their little process of being able to get in front of a crowd. And then you walk into a conference and you need to really, work up the energy just to say hello to someone and not sound corny. It's so funny. I've been seeing this app lately, commercial on articulation skills and, how you can, the best way to open, the best opener at a conference. Don't ask the person their name. How are you? What do you think? So connection is just such a thing. And with 2020, you yourself got a sales job in Orlando. You left your hometown knowing absolutely no one. And take me into that moment. I mean, new city, new industry, furlough because they couldn't even pay you since it was 2020. I mean, no guaranteed pay. That sounds insane. What were you telling yourself? Tell us that story.
Yeah, well, when I first came here, it was with a different mentality than some of the other places that I had lived between the ages of 18 and 23. Because during that time of my life, I was bouncing around and just looking at everywhere I lived as somewhere where I landed for a little while, but I didn't know what was coming next. When
Mm-hmm.
I moved to Orlando, I was moving to Orlando to start over here, to build a life, to build a community. I knew that would not happen quickly because there were other times that I, spent 2 years straight building community, and I saw that that's how long it took. I mean, it took a couple of years. So coming into my time in Orlando, there was a different level of commitment to it. And I think that played a huge part when COVID happened. Although there was uncertainties, and I thought to myself, well, shoot, I chose a really bad time to move and start over where I don't know anybody. I mean, where I lived prior was Pennsylvania, and at least I had a community around me. I knew that
Right.
it wasn't my long-term plan, but I at least had connections and I had mentorship. I had relationships. When I
Mm-hmm.
moved to Orlando, started working in a new industry, 2 months later, COVID happens. I'm like, oh my gosh. But the alternative of that would be to sit at home in my apartment. And that didn't make sense to me either. So I just continued to show up to work and continued to make the calls, continued to reach out to people, even though everybody was kind of hanging there on a cliff wondering what was going to happen next. How bad
Right.
really was this disease that was spreading around? Nobody was quite sure what was going to happen, how long it was going to last, how serious it was. I think for me, the level of commitment to Orlando just made things a lot more stable for me. I didn't have any question of like, oh, I'm going to go back to Pennsylvania, or I'm going to go back to Massachusetts. That wasn't even in my mind because I had decided to move here. And I guess I just understood the cost of that was time and sacrifice. And it took longer than expected because of COVID, but that's okay.
Of
It's been
course.
a very
Of course.
rewarding journey as a result.
But how did it make you feel having to stay focused on this job that literally had no pay, no guaranteed pay? We don't know what's happening next, and you're just there. It's just simply, well, I had nothing else to do. It's just simply your determination. I mean, how did that actually make you feel?
Yeah, I think that it made me feel, nervous because I was in a new city. I was renting an apartment by myself for the first time. And oh, by the way, having just moved here and not having a job, the whole, 24 months of consistent pay that they wanted to see, I couldn't show them because I didn't have that. The
Wow.
job that I had before this was a very basic entry level sales role in Pennsylvania where I did not make very much money. So I basically had to work off of favor with the apartment complexes down here and find somewhere to live. But again, I think with all of that coming together in the way that it did, I just had such an assurance that this is where I was supposed to be, and just a level of commitment to my clients, to learning the industry that I didn't know anything about. But it became kind of fun, it became exciting to learn something new and to learn a product line and learn how to sell that product, even though even my experience in sales was still very limited at that time. So I
Wow.
read books. I spent a lot of time with my mentor and just learning from him, asking questions, sitting with him, after hours. That's kind of how it went in that first year of me living here.
It's so funny because you talk about a mentor now, that mentorship, having someone else who knows a little bit more and you're able to receive that information. You sound very coachable, and being coachable, I think, is something that a lot of people don't realize. It's so much easier if someone can take you by the hand and say, hey, I went down that road. I went down this road. Try it this way. You will save yourself time, energy, and money. Wouldn't you agree?
I would. And I think a lot of people struggle with the idea of mentorship and inviting that layer of accountability into their life because it's, hey, you're opening yourself up to somebody else and giving somebody the flashlight on your life, if you will, and sharing the things that maybe the blind spots you have and sharing different perspectives about who you are and the way that you act. And that's hard for a lot of people. It continues to be hard for me. I haven't grown out of that necessarily the idea of sitting down with someone and giving them the open floor to speak into my life of love, I know that they're going to speak truths and be willing
Mm,
to say what I need to hear and not just tell me what I want to hear. But that's a challenge for a lot of people, especially in
it
today's
is.
society that kind of caters to comfort, and we don't want to upset anybody. We don't want to ruffle any feathers. So that becomes challenging, but increasingly more important.
And it's at every single level. So we talked about your mentorship from your coaches in high school. Actually, your mentorship goes back to 7 years old when you had your piano teacher. So
Yeah.
you went from the piano teacher. So even though we have parents and then you have parents that may not work out, a lot of people, I think, children and going into adulthood and in the business and entrepreneurial life, I'm seeing that mentorship is a constant thing that can really save someone a ton of time. I haven't had one-on-one mentors as much, but I have paid for so many coaches, but it's not direct, like where they're one-on-one talking to you about your life as you just described. So that first year in Orlando, you were the company's top earner and hit 1.2 million in revenue, six figures at 23. But what did surviving that year cost you that the numbers don't show?
I think this is something that it cost a lot of people during that year was just the uncertainty. And again, coming to work every day, coming into the office, wearing a mask, not knowing if I was even going to close any business and whether that would result in commissions or not. There was a period of time where we were given the ability to still come into the office. And again, my alternative was sitting at home in a relatively empty apartment because I was brand new down here. So the idea of
Right.
going into work and working at something and learning something and the ability to be around at least a couple of people that were in and out of the office during that time, that seemed much better to me. But throughout that first year, I had, thousands and thousands of calls logged in my CRM. And
Mm,
those are some of the things, just the rejections and the phone calls that were made to business owners that were completely in panic mode during that time, right? And I look back on that first year, just reaching out to people, beginning to build my LinkedIn. I'd never been on LinkedIn before, so I started using LinkedIn
wow.
during that time and connecting with new people. And of course, everybody had a lot of fear and anxiety during that time. So as
Hmm.
I called hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people day after day, there were a lot of people that, I was met with a lot of frustration in those calls. I was met at other times with a lot of people that were happy to hear from someone else, right? Like me
Right.
picking up the phone and actually calling and saying, how have things been? What are you seeing over on your end? Like, how's things been going? Do you need anything? And so those are some of the hidden costs that I would say are not seen beyond the revenue amounts is just the efforts to reach out to people to stay in touch, even when it's inconvenient, even when nobody answers you back because they're trying to figure things out for themselves, just like I was. But staying at it resulted in amazing things that year and for the next couple of years while I was at that
That's
company.
fantastic. And you said hard times strengthen you if you allow it, and that no amount of money can buy grit, resilience, empathy, or perspective. When did you actually learn that, not just believe it? Do you feel like it was that year, that 2020 year?
I think that it was probably even a little bit before that when I was living in Pennsylvania and just some of the coaching and counseling that I received there. I think I started to really come to grips with the fact that some of the difficulties that I experienced growing up did not have to define the rest of my life. I could actually use it as fuel and I could absolutely leverage the perspective that I gained through those difficult times to begin recreating and rewriting my own story instead of so much of my story being wrapped up around and identified with brokenness and division. Because so much of my story, if you were to ask me 10 years ago and I'd be on this podcast, just the undertone of everything would be that I come from a broken home and
Mm,
that I feel this sort of way with my parents and the way that, that we were treated or different things that happened. Now that's part of my story. It's part of my journey that I actually appreciate because of what it's made me into, and the perspective. Again, as you said, I do believe that no amount of money can buy that, in the same way that no amount of money can buy you a good reputation. I mean, the Bible even says a good name is rather be chosen than riches, than silver and gold. So this idea of having a reputation because of the way that you live, the way that you treat people, the way that you tell your story. I think for me, that's a big part of my story, is that others have just related to me because I've tried my very best to be real and to be honest in the way that I connect. I'm honest about the things that I struggle with, especially early on in my networking journey and sales journey. I'm very transparent about that. And I think that that really connects with people and creates a much more just genuine and relatable kind of experience, as opposed to me coming in and trying to prove something, which would be my natural disposition because of how I was raised in that very performative environment. I always felt like I had something to prove, right? Like I have to prove myself. I have to prove my worth. I have to prove my value. But then over time, through many, many conversations and much time alone, realized that I don't have anything to prove. Like if I'm just trying to prove my worthiness to God, for example, like I'm not worthy, or I don't have a sense of, value or favor with God because of what I do for him. He's already impressed by me because of the fact that he made me and that I'm his. Now I just have to live out of that place, out of the abundance of that, as opposed to constantly showing up every day, trying to prove everybody wrong, or trying to prove my worth in the room. And again, I think a lot of people relate to that. They're like, shoot, I've certainly done that. I've showed up in a room at an event, at a conference, and the way that I talk to people and the answers that I give are just trying to build myself up and trying to make me look good. And over time, I think you just realize that people don't connect with that. People connect with what's real, what's relatable. And if the way that I talk to people can help them understand, even just for a minute, that, hey, like I understand where you're coming from. Maybe we have differences, but there's common ground that we do have with one another. And if we can lean into that, then that's how relationships start to work.
That's right. You mentioned conferences, and it's one of the chapters in my book that I talk about, where you just have to basically get out there, meet people. It's an old adage that your network is your net worth. And I've heard for years, look around at the top 5 people closest to you, and you will be within a few $1,000s of whatever they make. So I've always made it a purpose to get into membership events, which is how I met you. I came to Orlando also, not knowing anyone in Orlando. My daughter lived there. My ex-husband moved her there. And we are a product of a divorce and a big fight over our daughter. And so the first thing I did was look up what membership groups were in town, networking events are in town. And so you've made a career out of that. And in fact, in the last 18 months, you've been to 180 events, but now you're toning down and being more selective so you don't devalue yourself by being too accessible. What is the lesson about scarcity and protecting your energy when you're going to so many conferences? It's like, okay, get out there, go to conferences. And then there's another side which I've done as well, kind of scale back. Okay, which ones am I going to? Who's the network? So talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think the big reason for me of being a little more selective on which events that I'm attending right now is first and foremost protecting my mental and emotional bandwidth, right? I've realized that I've burnt myself out at times because I've tried to be everywhere and be all things to all people. And that's just not sustainable long term. And it doesn't even really make sense because there's been a lot of studies done that you can only maintain X amount of number of relationships at any given time. So getting overly obsessed with just meeting more people, it's working against you, actually. It's not helping you. So trying to be And I've even told people this recently in conversations that I've had with them when I'm laying the foundation for why we're having the conversation, is because I'm trying to be more intentional to go deep with the relationships that I already have instead of getting so obsessed with just meeting more people. Because
Right.
I think that a lot of people could be guilty of that, especially within sales, community engagement. They're interacting with a lot of people. They're highly visible, which is good. It's good to be highly visible, but being visible and being seen is not the same thing. And I think that's where
Mhm.
a lot of people start to get discouraged. I know myself, I've fallen into this where I've gotten discouraged because I feel that effort that I'm putting in and what I'm doing should be resulting in something, but it's not.
Right.
And then it's like, well, are you even clear of what the objective, like what the desired outcome, what that actually is? Or
Right.
are you like, what are you actually working towards? Because if you haven't named that and you can't vocalize that to others, it's going to be very difficult to work towards that. It's kind of like the analogy of, I want to go to this destination. If you don't have a route, then any road will get you there. Like if you just want to go
That's
somewhere, any road will get you somewhere.
yeah.
So where do you want to go? And I think the other aspect of it too, as a coach and consultant and speaker, is realizing that not every room is worth my energy. And I've
Mhm.
learned that that's not a selfish thing. It's not a self-absorbed way of thinking. It's actually a really positive way of thinking, because if I'm spreading myself so thin emotionally and socially, then when it comes time to actually work with clients and give my very best to my clients, not to mention coming home and giving my best to family and friends and different
That's right.
people, I've realized over and over, I can't even do that because I'm spreading myself so thin professionally
Mhm.
by attending all these events. It comes time to be with friends on a weekend or go to a birthday party or do different things. And I'm exhausted. I'm burnt out. I just want to lay around. And that's not a
Mhm.
place that I want to be in. I don't want to be giving, my last crumbs of effort to the people that should matter the most to me.
Absolutely. And you teach that relationships are messy, slow, and take many touch points. So, in a society addicted to convenience, what's the truth about business development that people avoid because the fast way is so tempting?
Yeah, we could have a whole podcast segment on just this question alone, I'm sure. But the number one thing that I'd say is, you hear a lot within sales and business development that it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. I personally don't believe that's true, or I believe it's at least incomplete, because it doesn't really matter who you know. You could know of 1,000 people, but it doesn't mean anything if they don't know you. And if they don't know
Mhm.
how to refer you, if they don't understand who is the best introduction for you, if they don't understand how to do business with you, and I don't care who you know. I also care about who the people that you know, who they know, right? So
Right.
it's not just about, oh, it's about who you know. No, it's about the people that you know, who they can introduce you to and the access that you can get through that. And then do those people actually know you? And
Right.
that's where the shortcuts come in. Is like, there's no shortcut for that. You can be productive and you can be efficient in the way that you connect and build relationships with people. I, I believe that 100%. But I also believe that in order to go deep with people, in order to find a real sense of purpose and substance in your relationships, you've got to go through some life together. You've got to have the hard conversations. You have to understand, how to resolve conflict or to see past each other's differences, and how to learn to disagree with one another. And that's something that I think just as a society we struggle with, and something that I'm advocating for out here in the work that I do, is helping people come back to the ability to sit across from one another and to dialogue and talk about new ideas and talk about questions that they have, and not feel judged by it, not feel out of place because of it. But be able to bring their doubts, their questions, their ideas to the table and be able to talk about it, and then walk away with a deep respect and love for everybody. That's ultimately what I'm working towards.
So the lesson isn't just about networking, it's about self trust, Do I hear that right?
I would say, yeah, self-trust, self-awareness is huge as
Mhm.
well. And something that I think is underutilized when it comes to business development, relationships, the time that it takes to build relationships. You have to be self-aware. You have to understand and have a good understanding of your own emotions, the way that you process information, the way that you interact with others based on your natural gifts and tendencies. But then, hey, how do I begin developing more confidence in the way that I talk to people? Articulation. I think we talked about that at the very beginning. Like, how do you begin developing the skill of articulating yourself more clearly? If you're promoting
Right.
a business or a product, you should know how to articulate yourself really well.
Mhm. Mhm. I remember when LinkedIn first started and in the space I'm in funding and business, you run into so many broker chains. And when you are in person and you're speaking to someone directly, like you advise, and you're willing to talk to that person, you can get down to the bottom of whether there is any business to do there, if there's going to be a long term, if there's going to be relationship. I mean, you can meet someone and nothing will happen in that meeting. But as you said, I mean, so many people that I've raised capital from, I met 2, 3 years ago. You know, no one says, "Oh yeah, here's a check." So it's like, who do you know? And then, okay, did this person trust you? And then we'll talk about a few things here and there, a few deals. And then over time, yeah, and it's pretty much an average because I looked it up. 1.5 to 2 years of a sales cycle to raise capital, especially from institutional investors. It sounds insane, but that is really what it is. And especially in this time where people are losing other people's money or, in my space in multifamily or, what are you seeing out there? Isn't it, that's one of the biggest things right now. I mean, because the whole purpose of networking in the business community is to see where alliances lie. What are you seeing out there as far as the execution of an actual deal being done between people who physically meet versus people that sit behind a computer and try and contact people online?
Yeah, I think that from a credibility standpoint, there's just a degree or a layer of trust that comes when you're in person, because that experience of being face to face with people cannot be manufactured. It cannot be faked. You either can do it or you can't. On social media and our phones, you can paint whatever picture, whatever illusion, whatever fantasy life you want, and nobody's going to question it because it's there. It's there for
Right.
all the world to see. But when you're in person, there's no doubting the validity of that. And sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. Sometimes you'll talk with people and they don't have eye contact with you and you can tell they're not confident. And that obviously communicates something about who they are as a person. And those are the things you should be paying attention to. And so I would say, short answer to this question, the most powerful people in the world are still doing business face to face. So for
Right.
us to think that we can do things differently just because technology has advanced, I think is a little bit delusional, because at a political level, at a federal level, you see this everywhere, even in the business world, that it's still being done face to face over coffees and
Face to
teas
face.
and over lunches and suites at sports games and limos and, executive events. So that's where I think people are craving something that's genuine, something that they can look at and say, I can trust this. Because you go
Right.
on social media, you can't always trust it because AI might have been involved in it. From a creative liberty standpoint, you have no idea where that's coming from. And
Mhm.
yet in person, even this conversation is like as close as it gets to being face to face. You can't fake it. Like I'm not reading from a teleprompter. I'm just talking because
That's right.
I know how to communicate my story. I can talk for hours about the topics that I'm skilled at, that I would say, hey, I'm an expert on these things. Not because I have, you know, not because I have all this technology. It's because I have the real world experience, and that can't be
Right.
faked when you're in person. So I think that's why people are gravitating more and more towards events and of course, my whole strategy with it is how do you go into that event and actually have a clear game plan, not just
Mm-hmm.
going because you want to socialize or not just going because you're struggling with loneliness. It's like, how do you go and actually have complete clarity with why you're there, who you want to meet while you're there, and what you're going to talk about when you meet them? And then, hey, after you leave the event, what happens next? Like, if you don't have clarity on those things, networking is just going to become socializing. And that's what it is for a lot of people. Networking is not actually work. It's not actually effort. It's just, hey, they're socializing over some cocktails.
Mm-hmm. I remember one of my earlier mentors, which was one of my earliest bosses. And I just continue to call him a mentor because he taught me so much. He used to make me, I was like 18, he would make me listen to Zig Ziglar. He would make me come in to the office at 6 a.m., run on a treadmill, and listen to Zig Ziglar, the Sell Your Way to the Top series. I'm kind of dating myself.
No, it's great. Zig Ziglar's one of the classic, legends
Classic.
in this world.
I brought that up to say, even back in the 90s, I remember as technology was changing, early 2000s, there was a thing. It was like, okay, we got to be high tech, but high touch. And when I asked you to touch on AI, you said, I'm not really using AI for what I do. I'm going to stick to the humans and the human connection. But you are currently building a web app with an AI coding tool and using AI for outlines and organization. Where's the line for you between tools that help and tools that replace the human part?
Yeah. For me, I'm trying to really leverage AI to just stay ahead, knowing it's not going anywhere. So I can't be ignorant and think, oh, I can just avoid it. And eventually things will come back to real life, or we'll come back to a world where there's no technology. That day is never going to come. There will never be a day where there's no technology. But there's also never coming a day where we don't need human interaction with one another, which is why I'm so passionate about developing that skill set, because that's also not going away. So I'm trying to figure out how I can leverage AI to create more efficiencies in my business to help me be more productive so that when I am in person with people, I can be that much more present, that much more engaged, and I can have that much more impact, knowing that some of the administrative stuff that I don't like to do, some of the organization and just time and heavy lifting that goes into creating outlines and charts and different things are handled. It's not going to take me 5 hours to do something, that now could take 30 minutes. I just bought back time to reach more people and to sit down and connect with more people and be that much more effective with my in-person efforts. That's where I'm using AI. And I'm sure that as time goes on and I continue to learn more about what it's capable of, I'll probably use it in more ways than I am now. But I just believe with all my heart that part of the big issue with society today is that we've neglected the thing that we need the most, which is each other. And I'll continue to say on a personal level and on a business professional level that we can't neglect human interaction and relationships. If we do, we're going to get the result that we have now in our society, which is depression, anxiety, suicide at all-time highs. And nobody would even argue that because they know that it's true. But social media, technology, and the way that it's changed, the way that we interact with each other is absolutely the reason for that. I mean, it's not even a question.
I was talking about with my mentor, but I was talking about how he always said, don't be a conversationalist. Because I could, like you, I could sit here and I could hold on a conversation. You go to a networking event and it's easy just to have fun and enjoy, but with what you show people how to do is how to go in and be very, very specific about your game plan. I recently learned this. Actually, someone showed me on, what is that app? There's an app that a lot of conferences use and it will give you who's there. I never, ever paid attention to that app. I mean, I really never paid it. I might go on there to choose which networking event to go to, but someone taught me just last year to go on the app, pre-game the app, Know who you're going to, who's going to be there. Look at all the speakers, look at all the attendees, and set meetings up before, you do that when you get to the
Mhm.
event. So, is that the kind of thing that VIP Co helps people do on game planning those events and choosing the right focused, networking opportunity that's best for them?
Yeah, 100%. It's really focused on, from a philosophy standpoint, helping people build strong relationships and to live more fulfilled lifestyles as a result of it. But from a business angle is helping those that are in business development, sales, community engagement, or partners of firms, advisors, recruiters. Like, how do you go out into the market and start developing more qualified, more predictable pipelines of business, as well as increasing the lifetime value of your clients through your team's ability to build strong relationships, to network in the right rooms, to get in front of the right people, to follow up and follow through with those people. Because
Hmm.
a lot of people, when they go out and they network, they have no idea why they're going. They're just going because they think it's a good idea. They see their peers doing it. Their boss said they can expense it. So they're like, all right, this seems like a good idea. But I always tell people networking is one letter short of not working. And you've got to just be careful. That networking can easily become something you do out of obligation, where I would encourage you to network out of responsibility, not out of obligation to anybody or anything, but network out of responsibility to your existing clients if they're going to be in the room or you have opportunities to support them, as well as the responsibility to your future clients. If you've identified that your future clients are going to be in that room, you have a responsibility to show up and build the relationship with them and to put your solutions in front of them, because you know how it's going to help their business. You know how it's going to help them achieve their goals and achieve their objectives. But if you're going just out of obligation, it's going to feel like a drag and it's going to be way harder than it needs to be. And that's what I
Hmm.
see in a lot of people. And this is not just young people. I've talked to senior level partners of huge multi-million dollar law firms who don't want to go network because they don't know how. They're brilliant people. That's not why. They've never been taught how to do it.
So your company focuses, now you've taken all the energy, everything you've learned, and balled it up into this new vehicle that teaches people how to be better networkers. So for the introvert who feels unqualified and unworthy walking into a room, exactly like you did 5 years ago, what's the first small step they can take this week?
Yeah, I think, you can get really practical with it if you're somebody who is willing to go out to an event. I would say start by choosing an event and make a goal of talking to one person, having one meaningful conversation. If the idea of that is intimidating, then I would say, okay, next time you're out for coffee or, you're in line at the airport, talk to the person that's in front of you or behind you in line and just ask them how their day is going and ask them if they're having it, or in an elevator. And hey, any wins from your day, anything exciting happening in your week, and just try it. And you'll see that nothing bad's going to happen. It's all going to be okay. And you might just end up having a really nice conversation with another human being, and it's going to feel great. It's going to feel exhilarating. It might feel awkward and you might stumble over your words, but that's great. That's amazing. And then do it again and continue growing from there.
I was at a Grant Cardone business workshop, and he challenged everyone at the lunch break to go out and just flat out go up to someone and ask them, how much money do you make? It's like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I was like, and so many people came back and was like, they did it. And they literally got somewhere, like, people who do very well want to tell you how much money they make. And I was like, really? I was a chicken. I didn't do it, but I was shocked at how many people that had the courage to do that literally came back with connections and business cards and opportunities. And I was like, no way. I have tried to challenge myself to do that more than once, and it is just such a question. I can't do it. But
Yeah,
I
I don't think
challenge.
that I would. I don't think I would like asking that question either. I mean, I would. I would do it, I guess, just out of curiosity to see how people would respond. But it wouldn't be my question of
Yes.
choice.
It was definitely a social experiment for networking and just to prove that you could say something that wild and crazy and start a conversation, meet a new person. And actually, there's a social media guy that I see going around. And if you have like a really expensive car, or you're coming out of, Chanel or something, he'll just ask you, "Oh, this is really nice, so what do you do?" And normally he'll run into business owners and then he'll ask, "Well, when did you make your first million?" Just straight out of the clear blue sky, talking to someone random on the street that looks like they've done well. That takes some kahunas. So you said communication is a muscle. Anyone can build it. So even the most introverted person on the planet can do it. So what's the simplest rep someone can start with?
Again, I think it comes back to, looking inside yourself and asking how much you want to step out. If you are really shy, you might send somebody a voice memo. Instead of sending them a quick, convenient text, send them a voice memo. If you have the time, call them. If you want to be really crazy, FaceTime them. I have done my fair share of picking up my phone instead of sending somebody a text. This could be somebody that I don't know, by the way. It's not just somebody that I know.
Mm,
And instead of sending them a
okay.
text saying, "Hey, is this so-and-so?" I'll take out my phone and my camera and I will literally video record my greeting to them. Say, "Hey, my name's Caleb. Just touching base. I got your information from so-and-so," or, "Hey, I'm reaching out. Would love to connect with you." That could be something you do. You could, again, just strike up a conversation with somebody in the elevator or in line for coffee. You could buy somebody their coffee, and that could be your form of connection and just stepping out and being uncomfortable. And again, you will realize that nothing bad's going to happen and that it actually feels kind of good, even though it felt a little bit awkward along the way. And then I would just encourage you to do it again
That's
and keep doing
fantastic.
it until it starts to feel more comfortable.
Until it's comfortable. Yeah, it's definitely a muscle for sure. But you're scaling up. You're taking this thing to the next level when it comes to networking. And you've got this idea for law enforcement where you want to package a de-escalation and communications training into an RFP for police forces. Is that right?
It's something that I've given some thought to because of conversations that I've had with those in law enforcement that are seeing, younger individuals coming out of the academy that just don't have the ability to communicate effectively. And when you're talking about an industry like law enforcement, it's pretty important to understand how to de-escalate, how to collaborate with others in high stakes, high pressure environments, to be able to think on your feet, to be able to make quick decisions. And obviously communication lies right in the middle of that. So something that I'm thinking through.
That's amazing. So VIP Co has a communication link that you guys are going to provide to our listeners, a free offer. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so any of the listeners, I have a amazing resource with some of my top tips, and some of them are more practical than others, but it's just top tips on networking, relationship building, and I trust that it'll be an amazing resource for you. For anybody who's interested in joining my online community, I have a special offer for you as well to join that for a limited time. So please reach out to me or reach out to Tene, and we'll get connected with you on that. But again, this is for those that want to create a little bit more structure and consistency and even accountability around their sales efforts, around their community and the way that they're connecting with people. This is not just for introverts, although it's a great fit for them. Maybe you're an extrovert and you're somebody who's gotten out a lot and you've networked a lot, but you've struggled to convert some of that and you've
Mm.
struggled to see the real results from it. So this would also be a great fit for you there. And I look forward to connecting.
Awesome. So, what do you want a listener to remember if they feel too behind, too young, or too unqualified to start? Because I think you've broken all of those barriers.
I think even from my own life experience and things that have been really encouraging reminders to me is that God did not call you to run the race of the person next to you. He called you to run your race. And so if you can move forward with that sense of purpose and clarity to know that you can do something with your story, with your skills, with your perspectives that only you can do, it begins to lower some of that comparison and some of those emotions that tend to come up of being behind, or I should be doing more, or I should be doing something different. It's like, well, who's to say that you should be
Right.
doing more or doing something different? Most of the time that's coming from a little voice in our head, or it's coming from other people on social media that don't know us, might not even like us, or don't respect
Mhm.
us. So why are we listening to that voice when we have hopefully people around you that are speaking life and speaking truth into you and helping you to see what you can become at your fullest potential? That was certainly my journey with my mentors, seeing things in me that I didn't even see within myself yet, but taking them at their word and knowing and believing that they cared about me to say, hey, this is something I'm going to move toward. And it's not to impress the people behind me or next to me or in front of me. It's because I feel like this is the race that God has called me to. And this is what I've put my feet to. We're going to explore it. And if that means slipping and falling down, great. We get back up. We learn from it. We build calluses, and we, use that perspective to relate to others and to have greater empathy with others. That's the way that I see it.
I love, love, love that analogy. That literally just summed your childhood all the way up to adulthood in one little cute sentence. Like from the sports guy all the way to the guy who now helps people network and meet people and just be amazing and be human, get out from in front of the computer and go network and talk to people. I mean, it just sums it right up. Caleb, this has been a fantastic podcast episode, and I think it's going to help a ton of people. All of your links will be in the show notes. So they could get all of those resources and offers. And thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely, Tene. Thanks for having me. Thanks for listening, everybody.